Representative, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. All right, we've heard an awful lot of hyperbolic arguments from your colleagues in the House about why this contempt of Congress vote should not be taking place today. What's your argument in favor of the vote moving forward?
Well, it's always been the same argument. Here we have an attorney general. He has been duly subpoenaed, and he knows what the subpoenas are. He's an attorney. He's been a judge. He knows what they are, and he is not above the law. He has been subpoenaed, and it's been almost 8 months. He hasn't complied to the subpoenas. Therefore, without complying, then he is in contempt.
And Congressman, I got to ask you, because Delegate Norton said today that any doubt that this is about politics was put to rest when the NRA got involved. And she claimed that once again the gun lobby is directly responsible for a gap in federal law that allowed these straw purchases to happen. But I remember during a past hearing when you looked right at the Attorney General and you said, you keep saying this long gun provision would help. But you said the problem is that under Fast and Furious, those weapons still would have walked, wouldn't they? And I think that pretty much sums things up, don't you?
That's correct. And it is true. And he had to admit, yes. I mean, he tried not to, and he, bobbled and weaved. But the reality of it is, under this flawed operation, those guns would have walked with or without that long gun rule. And he knows it. And that's the problem we have here. So, no, it isn't. It had nothing to do with anybody, any lobbyist or anything else. It had everything to do with they had a flawed operation from the very inception. And who in the world approved this is beyond me. My background is law enforcement. And as a law enforcement officer, I know you don't give guns to bad guys who shouldn't have guns and not expect to see them again, because you're probably going to see them again, whether it's at a crime scene or you're looking down the barrel of it. So why on earth did our Department of Justice think this was a good idea? It was flawed from the very beginning. Even the Attorney General admitted that. And what we have said is we want to know who approved it, why it was approved, so that we can ensure that it doesn't happen again. We have a dead border agent, Agent Terry, great agent by all accounts, one of our American heroes, and served in our military. And what happens? Well, he is killed, and those weapons on the scene are part of this failed operation, Fast and Furious. And now his family deserves answers, the American people deserve answers, and Congress deserves answers, so that we can ensure that this never happens again.
What do you say to those Democrats today that kept saying, that Congressman Issa didn't call the former head of the ATF, Ken Melson, to publicly testify? We didn't get in President Bush's attorney McCasey. It's the blame Bush we keep hearing. We don't hear about accountability.
Well, they tried to say it was wide receiver, but wide receiver didn't go forward. It was shut down because they recognized it was a flawed operation. And instead, under this administration, and from all accounts by what we're seeing, this Attorney General's office, we don't know if he was directly or not directly involved, which is still amazing to me, that if there's an international undercover operation going on, that it doesn't rise to his level to be notified about it, to even approve it. But, we still don't know because we don't have the records. But this blame game is not what we're looking to do. What we're trying to find out is how it happened, why it happened, so we can prevent it from happening again. We have a deceased agent. His family's looking for answers. They deserve those answers. So do the American people, and so does Congress.
And it seems like what we've heard from a lot of the opponents of this measure are words of support for Brian Terry, but then almost a complete divergence into what this subpoena is or what the contempt charge is all about. They never mentioned the subpoena. I heard former Speaker Pelosi speculating that maybe this had to do with voter suppression in November and not compliance with a congressional subpoena that, as you said, was issued 8 months ago.
Correct, and that's totally false. And this has all been a blurring of the lines, or a blurring of what actually took place. And what you just said is what the real issue is. We had a flawed operation. Even by the Attorney General's own words, it was flawed. What we have requested through subpoena are documents. He has been served those subpoenas. That subpoena was duly served. He has failed to comply with the subpoena, and an attorney, a judge, you know what a subpoena is. Most Americans know what a subpoena is. So that's been over almost 8 months ago. And the person who made it political, in my view, was the president when he interjected himself about 10 minutes before the gavel dropped in the committee meeting to hold the contempt hearing by asserting executive privilege 8 months after the fact.
And I thought it was very interesting. Congressman Issa pointing out today that back in 2008, then Speaker Nancy Pelosi said oversight is an obligation to ensure against abuse of power. So what changed? What happened to that responsibility now?
That is our responsibility. And it is the responsibility of Congress to provide that oversight of these agencies and, of course, the Department of Justice. We have a Department of Justice that is not above the law. He was served with a subpoena, and he needed to comply with that subpoena. That's what this is all about. You can blur the lines, you can say, but he failed to comply with the duly served subpoena.
Representative, what would you say to folks who wonder, all right, well, what is this going to do? What's this going to accomplish here? So we hold him in contempt. What happens next?
Well, what happens next is that the Speaker then turns it over to the district court to follow through with.
Okay.
But what about the fact that it goes to the U.S. Attorney here in D.C. to move forward, to take it to a grand jury? I mean, and that's a guy that's working for Holder.
That's correct, but I want to believe in our justice system. I want to continue to believe in our justice system. And I believe that if the contempt charges pass, which I believe they will, that our justice system will continue to work the way it's supposed to.
And I know today you said, as you have said in the past, this isn't about politics for you. You said this is very personal.
It is. It is. My heart goes out to the Terry family. I lost a husband in a line of duty death. I've actually been with other family members that have lost their loved ones in a line of duty death. I have several friends that have lost their life in the line of duty death as police officers. And I know the Terry family is just looking for answers. And they deserve those answers. And my heart goes out to that family every day because they just want to know what happened, and they want to make sure, because I'm certain, I know they don't want this to happen to another officer. And so they are seeking answers just like Congress. We are seeking the answers so that this doesn't happen again, that we don't lose any more lives. And, we lost Agent Terry, but there's countless lives on the Mexican border side in Mexico that people have lost their lives to these drug cartels. And we're not talking just other drug runners. These are, a lot of times, innocent men, women, and children. And so we don't really know how many people have lost their lives to this flawed operation. Yeah, but I do know we need to find out how it happened, why it happened, so that it doesn't ever happen again.
Yeah, but instead you've got a president, he invokes executive privilege. You got a DOJ and a U.S. attorney, they want to deal make. They want to, hey, we'll give you these documents if you call off the case. And that's what this has come to. Did you ever think this is how it was going to end up?
No, I thought that the Attorney General would comply to the subpoenas issued and that we would work through these together and ensure that it never happens again. It was his choice, the Attorney General's, not to comply with the subpoenas.
Talking with Representative Sandy Adams. And Representative, I've got to ask you while we have you here, any thoughts on today's Supreme Court decision on Obamacare?
Well, as you know, the courts have never, ever surprised me on anything. So I guess what this just says is that we have to be more resolved now than ever to repealing this piece of legislation and putting people back in charge of their health care, not the federal government, not a Washington bureaucrat. From the very beginning, everybody has watched as health care costs have gone up. Businesses aren't hiring because of this. And nobody that I've talked with wants the government between them and their doctor. So this piece of legislation needs to be repealed. I'm committed to doing just that, and I'm going to continue to work on that issue to repeal it, because that's what the people in our district are saying, and I think the American people are just as stunned as a lot of us that the ruling came the way it did. But the reality of it is, it just makes me more resolute to getting it repealed.
Representative, thank you so much for your
Thanks
time.
a bunch.
Thank you.